Hey everyone, welcome back to another amazing video here at Hack the Box. I'm Dark, and today we're going to be talking about getting the most out of Academy. Now, don't worry if this is your first time that you're hearing about Academy, maybe you haven't used it before, or maybe it's something you have used and you're thinking, shoot, I haven't used this a lot, and I really could use a little bit better of a grasp on how to get the most out of it. This really is going to be the video for you. Let's go ahead and jump into what Academy is. So those of you who are not familiar with it, Academy is the Hack the Box training platform that is much more geared towards beginners. It is guided content that is meant to teach you one specific goal. So for example, you could go on there and learn Python, learn an intro to Active Directory. Good examples on here, network enumeration with Nmap. Fantastic module. Again, you can see that the goal of that module is scanning. And really, this is meant to give you a nice starting point if you're a beginner and you want to learn these individual skills. Maybe you're someone that's looking at Hack the Box and you want to enter into the InfoSec industry and get a little bit more experience. Academy really is going to be right there at the level you need it to. Academy can also be really great if you are coming back to InfoSec. Maybe you've come from a different section of InfoSec, or maybe you've been in defense, something similar to that, and you're coming back to much more of a technically focused field, or much more of a technically focused subset, I should say. This can be great for building confidence and really getting a good feel for where the field is at its current point. So again, all great stuff, really great depending on where you're at, and it can be really great for just making sure that you have skills locked in. Academy 101. So Academy, as you can see on the right there with that learn, that's actually part of the navigation in the site. There are several key areas. The two main ones that we're going to look at are modules and then training paths. So modules, and I guess I should mention exams, and then the Academy and Hack the Box labs are also on there. We'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment, but realistically, we want to focus on modules and then our training paths. Modules are exactly that. They are modules. They're meant to be individual pieces that you put into an overall path, and it's sort of think of it as a contained exercise that will teach you a specific thing. A good example is a getting started module will teach you how to get set up or how to get started in maybe scanning or with other defensive activities, things like that. But you can see they're really meant to teach you about discrete individual items. How the modules are structured. Modules are structured into these training paths. You also can have multiple modules in an individual unit. So again, they're bundled together to teach you an overall topic. So maybe you have individual subsets of a topic that you need to learn, but you want to have it all built into one core thing. That's really where modules are going to be bundled together for. The flexibility of modules. So as I mentioned, these are individual topics. You can jump into modules kind of whenever you want. And I say that with the idea that modules, you don't necessarily have to take them in a training path. You can do any module you want whenever you want. And in fact, there are a lot of modules, a fair number of them, that are shared between different training paths because you need to learn a specific skill for that training path or maybe for that topic that you're learning. But that skill is also useful elsewhere for maybe another topic. Again, you can see how a lot of these things add together, and you oftentimes will get the nice little benefit that you're completing a training path and you've already done a module or maybe part of a module, and you go to it and you think, shoot, I just need to brush up on this, nice and easy. And it works really well with that modular structure, hence, modules. Training paths, so as I mentioned, you can jump into those individual modules, but training paths are really where, they're my favorite part. Training paths are meant to guide you towards a goal, not necessarily an individual learning topic. A good example of a training path would be the bug bounty hunting certificate that we have. That training path will get you learning bug bounty skills and other bug bounty related items, anything that's really going to tie into that field. And you have this training path that will link these modules together and lead towards a certificate. Now, not every training path has a certificate, but many of them do. And it's a nice little way that you can put a capstone on your learning and then go show it off. I mean, who doesn't love showing off certs on Twitter and LinkedIn? It's always a fun time. As I mentioned, there's a couple other things. Exams, you can probably guess what those are at, or what those are, rather. As I just mentioned, we have certifications and exams, it's a natural part of the certification process. Those exams are meant to be capstone tests based on that learning path that you completed. And then Academy X Hack the Box Labs, that is going to be more of those individual machines, which if you're not familiar with that right now, don't worry, that's something we'll get into, and we'll talk a little bit more on when we are looking at our next steps here. And there at the bottom, my camera's covering one of these, but you can see that we have these wonderful little percentage bubbles that show how much of the content on the site of that category have you completed. So you can see in this case, I've done some offense, I've done no defense on this test account. I need to get on that though, but fun little way that you can track your progress from the dashboard. Moving ahead, let's talk about first steps. Now, in a moment, we're going to take a look at the Academy itself, and we'll look at the website as well as some of those modules that we'll mention here that you may want to dig into for your first foray, your first real attempt at some of the content on there. So getting started modules are always going to be your best friend, and there are a lot of them. My camera's blocking this, but there is a fundamental selector that you can hit. If you select fundamental, you will have all of the modules available to you within that search be at the lowest or easiest level that is available. Now, that also means that those modules will be cheap as far as the cube cost, or inexpensive rather. Now, cubes you use sort of like a virtual currency of sorts. Think if you play video games, a lot of video games have a currency that you pay money into the system, and then you can get that currency back by completing those actions. But you pay to have that initial amount on there. Now, when you sign up for Academy the first time, you will get a few cubes. I believe it is 40 or so. Not a ton, but it's enough to get you started. And once I figure that out, I'll add that to a comment down below, but I believe it is roughly 40. With those cubes, you can do a lot of the fundamental modules. They're not very expensive. I believe that some of them are 10 cubes even, and by completing these modules, you can actually get cubes back. Which is really cool. So you complete something, and then you'll get maybe 40% of those or something like that back, and you have those modules back, those cubes back, that you can go spend on other modules. And it's a nice way that when you complete something and you finished it end to end, you can go ahead and move on to something else, and it gives you a little bit of a kickstart moving into something else. Getting started modules, I alluded to these a little bit earlier. These are a list of some basic ones that are all within that fundamentals selection that I would highly recommend taking a look at. First and foremost is Linux fundamentals. If you're new to hacking, Linux fundamentals can be a really great way to learn a lot of command line things, start learning about how Linux actually works, and a little bit more of what you would know as a Windows daily driver or Windows regular user, or maybe a Mac user. You're going to be learning that for Linux. Great module, and it's pretty easy to get into. Intro to networking, this is going to be talking about IP addressing as well as learning about networks themselves, like learning how they're set up, learning topologies, things like that. Very easy module to get started with. If you have experience in defense or maybe in system administration, this really can be a great area to start out with. Web requests, this is an introduction to web requests, GET requests, post requests, anything like that. This is a great starting point if you have app development experience. So maybe you are a programmer by day and you want to pick up some pen testing skills. Web requests is a great way to get started. And then last but certainly not least, the penetration testing process. The penetration testing process, it's kind of self-explanatory. It is a module that teaches you how a pen test works. So what are the different stages in a pen test that get you from start to finish? We'll talk about scanning, enumeration, reporting, other things like that. It's a great way that if you are maybe new to pen testing and you really want to understand, hey, is the way that my team does this, is it the same way as other people are doing it? Or maybe you're new to pen testing entirely. That can be a great way to really understand what you're looking at in a professional environment, along with kind of those expectations of what you need to do in that situation. Now, I have a couple other modules called out here specifically, and then there's a picture of the bottom one on the right. These are modules that I really personally recommend just for getting started. I talked about this first one a little bit earlier, network enumeration with Nmap. Network enumeration with Nmap, it's scanning. It's really easy. It's something that's great for if you want to do something that's a hacker task, you want to do some sort of hacking, but you don't want to necessarily jump right in the deep end. Nmap is something that I use pretty much every day at work. It's bread and butter hacking tool. You can't go wrong learning this. Even if you are defensive and, pen test is just something that's a curiosity. If you learn how to use Nmap, it's going to be a skill that pays you back. And it's honestly pretty straightforward. Introduction to Active Directory. So if you are a system administrator, you're probably thinking, shoot, I already know all this. And you probably do. You can probably breeze through it. If you're not, and you haven't worked in a business environment, or maybe you are, you haven't done a pen test in a business setting, or haven't worked with Active Directory before in classes, introduction to Active Directory can be a great way that you can learn about the structure, learn about the hierarchy and then what you really want to get access to get the keys to the castle. It's going to give you an idea of what the typical worst day is for a business and what we would be looking to do as a pen tester. Now, using Academy effectively can be a little tricky, and this is one of the main points of the videos, or this video rather, than some of the beginner things that we've talked about. Those beginner things are very important, but what's really what really is going to guarantee your success is forming good habits when you're using Academy. Now, one of the most important things that a lot of pen testers I find unfortunately don't do, and for the longest time, admittedly, I did the same thing, was I wouldn't take notes. And I would take minimal notes. I would experiment with different levels of notes. It wouldn't be complete notes. And when I say complete, that means that you're taking notes on what you're doing as you're doing it. That may or may not include things you fail or things that don't necessarily work, but that's really up to you. I do recommend including things that don't necessarily work because that really gives you a complete picture of what you tried. Notes for things that you've tried in the past that hasn't worked really can be beneficial in the future when you return to the same environment, if you see the same vulnerability come up again, so on and so forth. You can see that there are a lot of situations where this really comes into play in really well to your benefit. Now, when we're looking at taking notes in Academy and taking notes even as you move on to the main platform, these notes will be a foundation of knowledge that you can build on. It's going to help you start to memorize and really start to have things sink in. If you find that you're not necessarily, if you're having difficulty learning, if maybe you don't think that you're remembering things as well as you should, or maybe you don't have that confidence that you really want to have with your hacking, or maybe the exam that you're looking at, it may be that you need to review your notes, or maybe you should go back and try taking notes if you haven't already. So taking notes, it really starts that memory repetition process. And if you're not, you're selling yourself short. You're really losing a lot of the value that you could be creating for yourself, and otherwise just getting from the activity in general. This next bit, well, everyone knows about goals. And goals are great in theory, but a lot of people don't necessarily put them ever into practice. Goals are something that we talk about a lot in school. You've probably talked about it in different classes you've taken. If you've taken any certifications or taken any one-day classes, they'll talk about setting goals for yourself. What's really important is that you actually do this. Setting goals is one of the easiest things to get home after you've taken the class and forget to do. Or maybe you set some goals during the class, but they're not real goals. Sitting down and thinking to yourself, where do I want to be in a year from now? Where do I want to be 5 years from now? That can make a world of difference because you actually have something to work backwards from. If you don't go through and do this, you're going to be kind of wandering in the dark, and you may find that you don't have a lot of direction, or you don't necessarily know where you're going, and you can lose... you can almost lose belief in yourself as you're doing it, or lose the ability to enjoy what you're doing. Hacking is a lot of fun. What we do is genuinely very fun. But if you don't necessarily have those goals, you're going to keep doing it, and you won't necessarily have something to build towards. And with the challenge that we face in InfoSec, or the various challenges that we face, having that goal can really help you stick the landing and keep yourself focused to completion. 1 year goals are great. 5 year goals are great. I really recommend having both. They really can help you with knowing where you are going. Almost a compass of sorts. Short-term versus long-term. Short-term goals are the here and now, so pretty straightforward. It's to give you something that you can focus on now. Long-term goals, it's going to be something that's more lofty, and it's going to be harder to work backwards from. Ideally, your short-term goals should build into your long-term goals, and you can see that relationship where you have that long-term goal that you know you're working towards, and it'll help you as you have opportunities come up. Say you are going to a conference and your company gives you the opportunity to take a bunch of SANS classes or a SANS class, or you have a number of talks that you can attend at a conference and you don't necessarily know what you want to attend. By having these goals, you can figure out really, you can know where you want to be, and it can make that decision for you. So you can go into these places and already have a goal in mind, have these decisions made and ready to move on. And honestly, you can spend your energy elsewhere. And that's really what's key here. Get certified, very straightforward. Certifications are like a benchmark. When I say a benchmark, you can match certifications up with experience. And that really comes into play here with the Academy certifications in full force. So the Academy certifications, you build towards them by completing these training paths and then taking the exam. You can build those goals, getting back to the earlier point, you can build goals based on those certifications and then build up to getting the actual, being certified and taking the exam. And that really, it puts a capstone on it. It really helps you know, again, that benchmark. It can help you know where you're at with your experience and give you that confidence to know where to go next. Knowing where to go next. Coincidentally, also what I just said. Finding related content. So this is referring specifically to when you're in Academy. Finding related content. A lot of modules will recommend, hey, you should go and do this module afterwards. Look for that. Look for those opportunities. Maybe if it mentions that you should learn this skill, or if it's something you have to Google while you are completing that module, you can go and take a note on that and look for similar modules that may or may not be of a similar difficulty. That can really give you opportunities to challenge yourself too. Getting recommendations. So if you need recommendations on where to go next, this is really where those goals come in mind. Goals can create recommendations sort of artificially for you, but if you know where you want to go, it can be a lot easier for a more experienced member of the community to give you a recommendation on what you should do. Additionally, you can get recommendations for what you should do in Academy in this way. So say you want to get a recommendation, you join the Discord, and you have this goal in mind. You can say that, hey, this is where I ultimately want to be. You don't have to say, oh, I want to do this in 5 years. No, you can say, I want to work towards being a penetration tester or being on Red Team. By having that in mind, you can ask that pointed question and really get what you want a lot faster in that way. This is also what you want to do, coincidentally, if you're stuck. So if you're stuck on a module and you need assistance, maybe the hint's just not doing it for you, realistically, the Discord is probably the best place to go. Now, the Discord, you can go and ask for help and chat in real time with other folks. There's also the forum, but keep in mind, when you leave a message on the forum, that's something that takes a little bit of time to get a response. It's not to say that Discord is always going to be instantaneous, but you can have that conversation in real time. And by being able to have that conversation in real time, you can come prepared and be able to have that dynamic exchange. And that's a lot of words, but coming prepared is, again, having those goals and knowing, hey, well, not necessarily, I should say, goals for when you're stuck, but you can do that research and do a little bit of Googling for yourself so you know roughly the direction you want to go, and you can take that into the conversation and say, hey, this is what I've tried, this is what I've looked up, what do you think I should do? Help chats in the Discord are really going to be key for that in that case. Once you're done with all that, you're probably ready for something a little bit harder. The first and really the main thing that most people think of after Academy is moving on to the main platform. Once you are done or you feel like you've reached a good point on Academy, you can create another account on our main platform. Now, this is not to say that you're done with Academy, rather you can do them both at the same time, and a lot of people really enjoy bouncing back and forth just to kind of give yourself that breather between doing something that's a little bit more challenging versus doing something that's guided content, and it's kind of going through different motions in that way. When you move onto the main platform, the main thing you're going to be looking at is machines and challenges, and machines are going to be the biggest draw there. In that specific case. So machines are the standalone systems or computers that have a number of vulnerabilities on them that are meant to be a specific situation, scenario, or maybe some sort of story that the box author is trying to tell. Very fun. It's a great challenge. It's a great way that you can really do some hands-on hacking that you have to really... There's a lot of trial and failure with that. It's not to say that's not the same with challenges, but challenges are a little bit different. Challenges are not necessarily, you're not going to be doing necessarily full-on pen tests of a challenge. They're going to be bites, little snippets of a pen test. Challenges are going to relate into CTFs. They're going to relate into maybe different hacking competitions, or maybe if you're in school, different assignments that you might have to do. Challenges could be, here's a hash, go crack it. Go figure out how to get access to this. Challenges are, again, those much more focused snippets, but it's not to say that they can't be equally enjoyable, if not better than many machines. It really depends on what you're into, but again, it's a great way that if you find that you really like a topic in Academy, like cryptography, as I mentioned before, or maybe you really enjoy Active Directory. Well, Active Directory is going to be a machine in that case, but cryptography, you can look at those challenges, you can look at retired ones, and you can really drill deep into that if that's where you want to focus, and maybe it's where you want your career to be or to go to. Some other things on the main platform include Pro Labs and other challenges. So Pro Labs are these contained environments that are essentially like a business in a lab, that this business, we know how it's vulnerable. The challenge is getting through that lab. So you have an environment that you go into. It's sort of like conducting a pen test. It's a ton of fun. A lot of people really enjoy them, and they're very, very popular. There are some beginner labs on there as well, such as Dante and Zephyr, which is our intro to red teaming lab. Those can be really great if you're looking for a challenge that's, again, that full network situation. Fortresses are just very challenging boxes that are going to have just difficult elements introduced to them by specific companies. Fortresses, a good example is the Jet Fortress, will have specific challenges that are designed by a company that are meant to help you kind of gauge where you're at, sometimes to get a job offer. I don't believe necessarily job offers often, but you can have the Synac challenge, other things like that. They're really great, and they can be a great way to really get to see a company's creativity in action. Endgames are challenging endgame labs. I won't go too much into that here just because this is much more of a beginner-focused video, but endgames are going to... they're really going to challenge you. And it's something that I would recommend if you're interested in that to dig in further on the Hack the Box main website. Ranking up, so once you're on the Hack the Box main website, your first challenge is likely going to be something that's retired. I would look at easy boxes that you have a video that you can follow along with, or maybe something you'd like to challenge yourself with. So for example, if you have a lot of experience with Linux, or you like that that sort of challenge, go find a Linux box. And same on so on and so forth for Windows and other different boxes that you can find on the site. First challenge, Same as a box. I guess I mentioned boxes first, but challenge boxes, again, find what you're interested in. Go find something that is retired that you can go and complete. Now, I mentioned retired for a specific reason. Retired content has write-ups. Retired content, you can go and check where you might be stuck as you are completing the content. So you can go and check the write-up for a hint, something to just get you move forward. Again, there's a lot of stuff, and I do recommend you dig into this when you are ready for it, or if you're interested in it. There's a lot of fun stuff on there, and you really can't go wrong. That being said, let's dive into one other thing. Let me find my exit. We're going to jump over to Academy itself real quick before we wrap things up. So this is the Academy dashboard. If you are looking for some of the modules that I mentioned, you can find them here under all modules. And then you can click Fundamental to find ones that are going to be easy, or something that we consider to be a fundamental task, or something fundamental to pen testing or blue teaming or anything in InfoSec. One important tag on here is this updated bit on the Linux fundamentals. It looks like my cursor is showing up. So right over here, that updated bit means that it is a module that it has been updated from its first release, or it's something that might have been updated recently. If you see something like this, that you've completed that module in the past and maybe you want to return to it, or maybe it's something you want to brush up on, looking for something that's updated and seeing that it's updated really can be a great way to give yourself that refresher. And again, you can see there's some other updated modules here. You can check all of your in-progress modules, but let's take a look at learning paths. So we have two different types here. There are skill paths, and then there are also job role paths. Clicking into skill paths, this is probably where you're going to want to start. The basic toolset is a great path for really getting your core foundation in hacking. It's going to teach you how to scan. It's going to teach you how to interact with web applications, both things we've mentioned before, and many more things. Great way to really make sure that you're building yourself up and setting yourself up for success. And you can see there's some other interesting ones here. Cracking into Hack the Box. This is what I would recommend taking a look at when you're ready to join the main site. Very easy module. It's meant to give you a walkthrough of, hey, this is the different sections of the main site. These are the different things that you're going to want to maybe check out, or maybe here it's how these different things work. Great for if you want to make that jump from Academy to the main site and then start doing content on both. And you can see that there's many more topics here. Really great for picking up these individual skills, such as local privilege escalation being a great example. Moving into job role paths, this is where you're going to get things such as bug bounty hunter, penetration tester, and then we're going to have some more defensive content that comes out later this year. But great way to get started. Bug bounty hunter is super fun, and that's something that's a little bit more challenging, but it's really going to push you and push your learning to really great places. That being said, that was everything that we were going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to join the Discord and be sure to ask your questions there. There's also the forum, as I mentioned, and otherwise, happy hacking.